And we're back again. Day number 4 or 5. I can't remember now. Lots more videos to go through. We'll do probably 3, 4 or 5 tonight because I get a bit carried away. The first one, I don't know who sent me these. I've got so many now. I only record some of the names because I'm useless. First one, titled 101st Airborne Division 502 PIR. Nice and simple. We do like 502 videos, you know, it's after my own unit. So, right, let's make this full screen and have a nosy. First thing off, he's in a 43 jacket. Okay, well, it doesn't say it's D-Day, Normandy, so we'll have to see what the others say.
Good morning.
Good evening.
My name is Vito Abenanti. Our unit is Baker Company, 502nd Parachute Infantry Regiment, 101st Airborne Division. The 101st Airborne took place in major battles during World War II, Normandy invasion, Operation Market Garden, and of course everybody knows the Battle of the Bulge. What we have here today is some basic equipment and information about what we took part, the 101st took part in 3 major campaigns during World War II. That was the Normandy invasion, Operation Market Garden, everybody knows as D-Day. Operation Overlord, which was the invasion on D-Day. Operation Market Garden, which was the aerial invasion of Holland, and also the Battle of the Bulge. So what we have here is a basic equipment load for paratroopers during World War II. During World War II, paratroopers were new to combat. It was something that had never been tried before. The Russians were actually the very first to start airborne operations. The Germans took that innovation and took it further. But during World War II, it was really the Americans and the British that you made the most use of airborne troops for major campaigns. What we can do is we can go around and we can show some of the equipment. Let's start with this. This is basically a basic layout of what was called the T5 rig. The T5 rig was the basic parachute that U.S. troops used during the war. It had a main canopy and it had a reserve included for all the equipment that the paratroopers carried during World War II. For the
Obviously nobody's allowed to get close to these so we could actually see it. It's displayed half a mile away.
Normandy drop, if you included parachutes, reserve chute, weapons, food, ammo, cigarettes. The average load for the Normandy invasion was between 140 to 160 pounds.
I have no idea if that's correct. I'm not even going to pretend like I know that sort of nonsense.
When you take into consideration that the average airborne paratrooper during World War II was between 5'6" and 5'10" and weighed between 140 to 160 pounds. So when you see videos of the paratroopers getting into the aircraft, old movies of it, and they're kind of pushing and lifting each other into the aircraft, that is actually very true. They literally carried their body weight, which included also water, food, knives, cigarettes, and anything that would basically they felt that they would need for the campaign that was to take place in Normandy. The Normandy campaign was expected to have paratroopers in combat 3 to 5 days. Casualties were expected to be anywhere between 80 to 85%. That means that out of every 10 paratroopers that jumped into Normandy, they expected 8 of them to either be killed, wounded, or captured. Let's start with the basic rifle. The basic rifle used by the U.S. Army during World War II was the M1 Garand. It's a 30-aught caliber, 30-aught.
You probably know why I'm chuckling. If you don't, it's the genuine, standard, authentic issue 101st aviator sunglasses. Just No, no, no.
.6 semi-automatic, clip-fed, gas-operated rifle. It was the first semi-automatic rifle to come into service with any standing army, coming into service with the United States Army in 1936. This was the weapon that the majority of GIs carried.
I don't know if that date is correct. We'll take his word for it. I mean, just take this guy. He's in 42s, no CC2, no belt, ridiculous sunglasses.
Next one would be, this is an M1 carbine. This particular model it has a Paratrooper folding stock, which was designed so paratroopers can stow it and carry it easy. It was mostly designed
with an incorrect rear sight and a cartridge belt. I assume he's only holding this for the demonstration. Well, regardless, the cartridge belt is still incorrect. Oh, is this a no shirt? Oh dear. And again, no CC2. Straight out about the front.
To be issued to what was called, well, basically for machine gun crews, mortar crews, maybe officers, anybody that did not need to carry.
Okay, so this guy does have the sort of basic building blocks of knowledge on how a unit is set up, the TO&E. Although he said maybe officers, but officers is what it states in the TO&E. Yes, there's exceptions, but as a general rule, officers.
The full M1 Garand, but still needed a firearm. This was smaller, lighter, fired a smaller round, but still an effective rifle. Now,
that's one of the, I'm glad he said that, because that is one of these things that people being the incorrect sort of reenactors, they dumb down the carbine as being this ineffective weapon that wouldn't shoot through cardboard. It was just crap. It didn't do anything. You couldn't kill anybody unless you hit them with it. It's utter nonsense. It's lethal. Those rounds will go through a German helmet. It's a strange choice of caliber. Yes. And I'll never understand why they chose to have this new unique round only fired by that one suddenly added to all the other munitions that the US Army had in service. It doesn't really make sense to me. You've got 3006 used by, wow, so many guns, from the Springfield, the Garand, the Browning automatic rifle, the 1930 cal. So you've got one box of ammo that can be divvied up between all these different weapons. Same with the 45, it goes in the Thompson, it goes in the 1911, not that 101st should have any. It goes in the grease gun. Then you've got the M1 Carbine, who has its own round. So you've all of a sudden got a third, another, I mean, it's basically three rounds. You've got 3006, the 45, and then the .30 for the carbine. All of a sudden you've got this other one, a whole new logistical problem, a whole new logistical chain that needs to be put in place. It just seemed a lot of work for one weapon that could have had, well, any number of other calibers, really.
We have here, this is an M1 Thompson. The Thompson Submachine Gun is a 45 caliber, full auto, magazine fed submachine gun. What that means is that it fires a pistol round as opposed to a rifle round. The Thompson itself came into service with the United States Army at the end of World War I, and it went through different versions to eventually this particular model. This particular model is the M1 Thompson. This was designed to be used by the U.S. Army. It was cheaper to manufacture. It only used thick magazines.
Oh, cheaper than the 1928, yeah, because it doesn't have the cuts compensator. It doesn't have the other sights. It's, yeah.
Still fired a 45 caliber round. Has a rate of fire of about 750 rounds per minute. Has a maximum effective range of about 250 yards. Another weapon that...
Oh no. What's he going to say? Another weapon that what?
Sometimes was used, mostly by rear echelon troops, was the
Okay, good. Unlike that other guy in that hall, the other 502 guy who was saying this was one of the favourite weapons of paratroopers. At least he said it was a rear echelon thing. Yeah, MPs, guards, that sort of role. It's certainly not a frontline weapon.
1907.
Model 1887.
Model 1897 shotgun. The shotgun was mostly used by rear echelon as for MPs for security.
There we go.
A lot of times, if for MPs, if they were guarding prisoners, they would carry one of these. By the Geneva Convention, these were not allowed into combat, and so therefore were not used by infantry combat units. They were mostly, as I said, these were used mostly by rear.
I heard that a lot of times. Anyway, actually check to see if that's true. I'm not going to. It's just one of those things I've heard several times, but I've never actually looked it up to see if that's true and if it's not just one of those rumours that everybody keeps on saying.
Echelon, and majority of the time they were used by military police. Another rifle that was also used during World War II was the 1903 Springfield. Now the 1903 was also used during World War I. It is a same as the M1 Garand. It is a 30-06 caliber rifle. It is a bolt action rifle. That means every time you need it.
When he says same as, he just means the caliber, that everything about the gun is different.
The load around, you had to...
Oh dear. No shirt and a white t-shirt. No CC2, no helmet net, no scrim.
Physically pull back the bolt and load it. You gotta push the spring down. So each time you needed to fire a round, you would pull back the bolt would throw out the spent round, and you would load a new round. It would hold as an internal magazine of 5 rounds, as opposed.
Okay, it's, they're not concentrating around any one specific time, one specific impression. They're all sort of a mixture of everything, and yeah, everybody's doing their own sort of thing. Hence why you got 43s from the guy over here. You've got 42s which aren't CC2'd, but they are giving information which is correct. He hasn't said anything. I've just gone, oh Jesus, what's this guy doing? I mean, the impression isn't really 502 other than they've put hearts, well, on his helmet. There's not many helmets. There's one on the floor. The information is right. It's just the impression. But these are reenactors. These are not living history. They're not promenaders. They are reenactors. They are your standard reenactor. I think you don't want to see anything less than this. You don't want to see any more than this. This is the basic reenactor. This is, and for me, this is good for reenactors. There's nothing awfully wrong.
Opposed to the M1 Garand, which had a clip that held 8 rounds.
Except the goddamn white t-shirts, of course, and lack of shirts.
Now that's what they call an M block. As you can see, it feeds directly into the top of the M1, and it holds.
Oh, they're blanks. I was looking, thinking, what the hell are those? That looks really weird. Yeah, fine.
8 rounds, and when the 8 rounds are fired, it just spits it out. Now also over here, what we have is some other equipment. We have some captured German weapons, which would be the K98, which was the standard rifle used by the German Army. As a matter of fact, that one was the German Army used the K98 in one version or the other all the way through World War I and World War II. Same thing as the 1903 Springfield. It has the same type action. You pull back to load around and push the bolt forward to load the round. It's a very basic action. A lot of countries actually use the same.
Yeah, the K98 is manufactured in so many countries. It's crazy. Also, bayonets for K98s, you get from all around the world, Brazilian ones, Spanish ones, you name a country, they probably produced a K98 at some point in history.
Basic bolt action. It was used by the Germans, it was used by the British, it was used by the Americans, it was used by the French. It's a basic design that was used...
Wait, used by the British and used by the French? Well, I'm uncertain of that, so we may disagree on something.
Pretty much all the countries. Also, what they carried during World War II is what is a 9mm. They had the same thing as the Thompson. It's a 9mm. Difference was this was a 9mm instead of the 45. It's called an MP40. What a lot of people incorrectly refer to as a Schmeisser. The reason why they call it a Schmeisser.
Oh no, this is going to be wrong, isn't it?
Is because the company that made the magazines was called Schmeisser, and they not automatically connected the magazine to the rifle itself.
Whoever told him that is a fucking moron. Google that. Google. Sorry, that's absolutely absurd. Why would you name a gun after the magazine? And the magazine's not even called Schmeisser. Oh, I believe this goes back to the... Oh, Jesus, what is it? Is it the MP38 or is it... It's one of the early predecessors to the MP38 and the MP40. And it was the designer of not that gun, one that looked like it. I'm sure that's right. I'm no expert in German weapons, but go onto Wiki or Google it, and you'll probably find out that that is utter nonsense what he's saying, and what I'm saying is probably roughly roundabout true.
It's a 9mm, fires roughly about the same kind of rate and distance as the Thompson. Once again, also used quite often by the German Army.
Quite often by the German Army. Okay, this is getting more and more daft now. Of course it was used by the German Army. They developed it, they manufactured it, their troops were some of the only ones to ever use it.
Very reliable, very dependable weapon. As you can see...
Unless you get it cold, in which case places like Russia, they would abandon those or get rid of them somewhere safe and use PPSH, something like that, because it didn't jam in the cold. It was too overly engineered. It's that precision engineering which doesn't do well in extreme heats, extreme cold.
See, there's a main chute, which is a T5 chute. Then you also have a reserve chute. The difference between the T5 and the reserve is T5 is about a 25-foot canopy. The reserve is about a 20-foot canopy. The purpose of the reserve was that if you had any malfunctions or any problems with the main parachute itself, that the purpose of it was you would release the main chute and hopefully you would still have enough time to engage the reserve chute. Now the problem was that for Normandy especially, combat drops were much lower. A lot of the paratroopers jumped. The standard altitude for a combat jump was 500 feet because of the fact that they had a lot of new pilots that were flying to transport aircraft. They had never been in a combat before. They took evasive action once they came over the French coast and the Germans started firing anti-aircraft.
It's very generalized. Like, they all took evasive action. They all flew low. I don't know how many flew low, how many took evasive action, but this is very, very generalized look at it all.
Some of them flew higher, some of them flew lower, some of them flew faster, some of them flew slower. So that created a lot of issues, and a lot of paratroopers jumped from as low as 350 feet. A lot of them barely had enough time to engage their chute before they hit the ground.
Well, let's make one thing clear. You don't engage your chute. The chute engages itself. You're attached to the plane by the hook. You jump out the door. It pulls the parachute out behind you. You don't do anything. You don't engage your chute. The chute engages itself.
Brief history of the 101st Airborne Division. The 101st actually traces its heritage all the way back to the Civil War. The 101st Infantry Division was actually a National Guard unit stationed from Wisconsin, roughly in the Milwaukee area. If you look at the patch, the 101st Airborne patch has an eagle on a black background. Now the eagle is nicknamed Old Abe, and the reason why it's nicknamed Old Abe is that the infantry unit, to pay homage to President Lincoln, basically named their mascot, which is the eagle, Old Abe. As a matter of fact, the 101st Air Mobile Division, which is what the current designation for the 101st Airborne Division is actually still has an eagle as a mascot and has had one throughout its entire history. A lot of people argue about which unit in the United States Army was designated as an airborne unit. Some claim that the 82nd Airborne was airborne before the 101st. This is not correct. Both the 101st Infantry and the 82nd Infantry were designated airborne at the same time, roughly in June of 1942. Now,
well, yeah, that makes sense. I've never heard anybody arguing about it before, but the rivalry between the two units, I'm not surprised. Yeah, it makes sense. They were both done at the same time. If you're going to convert a couple of units, why would you do it at separate times?
82nd Airborne Division also has a very long and storied history. If anybody remembers or anybody's ever heard of Sergeant York, Sergeant York was a highly decorated member of the 82nd Infantry Division during World War I. As a matter of fact, there's been movies made about him with, I forget the name of the actor, but he was actually as a member of the 82nd Infantry Division. Now, the 82nd Infantry Division did go into combat first, taking part in operations in North Africa and Sicily and Italy, while the 101st Airborne Division, first time in the combat during World War II, was the D-Day landings in 1944. But as if you look at the history, the 101st has a very storied history during World War II. And I'm sure everybody, has heard of D-Day. Not so many people have heard of Operation Market Garden, but everybody's heard of the Battle of the Bulge. I think the Battle of the Bulge is pretty much the battle where the 101st gained its reputation.
I don't know about that. I mean, people have heard of the Battle of the Bulge. I think if you ask anybody what it's about, they probably, like most people, wouldn't have a clue. If you ask people what Normandy is all about or D-Day is all about, I think most people would have some idea of what that involves.
And it became folklore, just for what they did to defend and secure Bastogne during the battle. Well,
not really a lot we can say about that. He gave a lot of good information. One pure gem of nonsense, which fantastic. I love that idea that MP40s are named Schmeisser because of the magazine. Yeah, please go and Google that. And please, write in the comments if anybody actually watches this, and tell me if I'm right. I'm sure it's to do with the designer of one of the predecessing guns to the MP40, MP38. Yeah, not very exciting. Okay, we'll stop there and I'll crack on with another one in a second.